This is the number one thing that you can do to help your songs get to that next stage and get closer to being finished, and eventually finish them. Our B section sounds like this. Hey cuties, we are back once again to go through another stage of the song completion kit. We're looking at stage 3 this time. Go back and check out episodes 1 and 2 and episode 0 actually, because this is the 4th episode even though it's called episode 3. I wish I hadn't done that. This time around we are talking about a song idea. That's where we've got at least a couple of different loops, a couple of different sections, different flavors that we're going to use in our arrangement to keep things interesting, provide some contrast, and make sure that our song has a satisfying arc. This is the number one stage that people get stuck before they get to. People don't often get their songs to this stage. A lot of the time, you get stuck in the loop stage, that's stage 2, where you've got a piece of music, a chunk, it works, it sounds good, you've got different parts that will fit together, but then when it comes to actually turning that into a song over the course of several minutes that actually has a satisfying arc, there's not enough musical material there to keep things going, and it stagnates, and you might get a minute or a minute and a half of stuff that you really like, but then you're not really sure where to go next. And this is the number one thing that you can do to help your songs get to that next stage and get closer to being finished, eventually finish them. I cannot stress enough that this is like the number one thing that helps me to finish songs when I get stuck with them. Getting in the habit of coming up with alternate sections for my tracks has been a massive game changer, just in terms of how much further I can take each song and eventually how many songs I can actually finish. Anyway, let's do that and go over the... I don't like that. What the f*** is that? What? What? How do I stop that from happening? This is baffling. If you know why my MacBook webcam is doing that, and then there was something else as well that was like, there. What is that? If you have any idea why it's doing that, then please drop me a comment, because what? That's not what anyone wants. Anyway, I'm going to get stuck in and we'll take a look at the... Try not to make the thumbs up thing happen again. Stage 3 chapter of the song completion kit. Okay, so we're here looking at stage 3 of the SCK. Still not sure how I feel about actually saying that out loud, but we're talking about the song idea, all the raw materials ready to be put into place, or most of the raw materials. To be perfectly honest, a lot of the time I add things, I take things away when it comes to the arrangement. None of these stages are cut and dry. Once it's done, it's done. Things you will be going back and forth across all of these kind of different modes as you identify and try to come up with solutions for different problems and roadblocks that you run into along the way. But all of which is to say, having multiple different sections that you can construct your track out of, even if like me, you're primarily a dance music producer where we don't have kind of verses and choruses and stuff like that, having kind of an A section and a B section and maybe even a C section is super important for being able to make dynamic, interesting music that's going to hold your listeners' attention. So what are our potential blocks at this stage? Well, the first is that we don't know where to take the song next. That's fairly self-explanatory. We just don't know what to add on to it. We don't have any ideas to make a contrastic section out of. Second potential block, the sections don't really fit together. They don't cohere into a whole that actually sounds like they belong in the same track. For some tracks, they are going to sound really different. That works in certain styles of music, other styles of music, not so much. So it's just about having an idea of what you're going for and what you're trying to achieve with your song so that you can make decisions accordingly in terms of how related your different sections are. And then the last one, which is probably the place where most unfinished tracks linger and wither on the vine, is getting stuck listening to your loop over and over with no new ideas. You just get stuck in this zone of, well, I've got what I've got and I don't know what to do next. So I'm going to listen to it again and see if this time round it prompts some magical inspiration that I've never come across in the hundreds of other times that I've listened through to this loop. That might be a bit of an over-exaggeration, I might be being a bit harsh there, but putting it like that hopefully communicates something about how much that kind of attitude is just setting yourself up to fail. If this is you, you're probably at the stage where you just need to take a break from your track. As we said right back in the start of the guide. If you don't know what to do next, take a break. Whether that's a short time, whether that's a long time, working on something else, taking a sabbatical away from music making. If you're getting frustrated, you're getting stuck, you don't know where to go next, take a break, come back to it and try some of these strategies. So strategy number 1 for getting out of the loop stage and getting to stage 3 here is to take one element of your track and build a new loop around it. So it doesn't even have to be one of your main sounds. It can just be a supporting layer or a couple of elements of your drum kit. Take something, keep it the same as it is in your first section and recontextualize it by making different musical choices in the instrumentation that you're supporting it with and layering around it. This can even work if you've got something that is super vital, super characterful, super characteristic of the entire direction your song is going, like an amazing bass line or a particularly memorable hook or lead sort of thing. Taking that element that sounds a certain way and challenging yourself to make it sound completely different by using a different drum beat, a different chord progression, different sound palettes. Take the same melody and put it into a different synth or a different sampler or a different instrument. That's a great way of having some cohesion between your different sections while making sure that what you come out with is something fresh and distinct that's going to be a really great breath of fresh air, something really dynamic to contrast against your first starting idea. That brings us into strategy 2, which is to keep some continuity between sections. This is something that's going to really vary a lot according to personal taste and the genres that you're working in, the scene, the other artists that your music is in conversation with. But try to think critically about how different your different sections sound, whether you need to change absolutely everything up, whether you want to make it more of a subtle evolution, building on it in more minimal ways. And if you do find that, hey, I've got this other idea for this other section that sounds completely different from my first idea and I want to try and jam the two together, that can be a really great exercise to take some elements from one side, take some elements from the other and try to kind of marry them together and blend between them in a way where you get this radical kind of contrast, but there is a heart and identity to your song that carries through the whole thing, whether that's just an attitude, a vibe, or it's more specifically about particular musical elements. The third strategy is similar to trying to kind of build out your loop. You can just take what you've got, duplicate it, and tweak some things. This is probably the main way that I end up trying to get to this song idea stage, is to just take the drum pattern that I've got, copy it, and try to shift a couple of significant elements around, the things that are really pinning down the groove and dictating the feel of the track, and just shifting them in a way that gives the track a whole new flavour without sounding like a complete diversion into different territory. You can also have the sounds that you're using play completely different riffs, notes, melodies, chords to the same rhythm, or different rhythms to the same notes. Just getting in there with the MIDI, or if you're an instrumentalist, trying to change things up, the way that you voice chords or little phrases and rhythmic figures that you're playing. Just swap them around, vary them up, and use what you've already got as the seed for this other section. Okay, that about covers it for the actual content of the guide, let's go over to Ableton and I will show you where I've gotten to with the track that we've been working on, how I got to this stage of having a song idea of a couple of different sections. Alright, so I'm back inside of Ableton and I've made a few tweaks, made a few changes, altered some of the stuff that we had last episode and added some new stuff in. And I think it's going in a really cool direction. So where are we at? The way that I've organized this is to lay out my A section or my initial idea and my B section, this new idea that I'm going to trade off when it comes to arranging the full track, into two different scenes here in the session view. So the first one sounds like this. I've made this drum loop twice the length, just so that I can get the cowbell on a, let's try and hear that a bit more closely. This cowbell is now doing a 2-bar rhythm, where pretty much everything else I think is on a 1-bar rhythm. So just having loops of different lengths on top of each other, that thing that we keep coming back to that I think is really key to my personal style of dance music drum programming. And then you may notice as well there's another whole new lane, which is these two hi-hats. So just giving myself more flexibility in the high end of different percussion, hi-hat, shaker things to swap in and out. Having some flexibility there is going to be really key to maintaining a consistent energy level while still being able to kind of vary things up between shakers, closed hi-hat, open hi-hat, and keep things dynamic and interesting. So yeah, first section is basically the same stuff that we had last time. I've got the bass sound, I've got the drum loop, the chord stab, and this organ sound, which means that our contrasting section is where this pad lives. Now, I've done a couple of things. First of all, I've decided, okay, because I had these ideas from last time of, first of all, having the longer bass note repeating over a longer time scale, where we've got this repeating over 8 bars instead of 4 for the bass, and also the change to the chord stabs FM guitar sound, where in order to make it fit with the pad, if you recall, I made an alternative version of this clip that only has the second chord. I decided, based on those two things, okay, my B section, my alternate section, is going to be based around the pad sound, this longer bass pattern, and the matching chord stab pattern. We're leaving this organ sound in section A, and we're swapping it out for the pad sound. Now, I've also layered up the pad sound. I'll let you hear what that sounds like in a minute. And I duplicated the drum pattern and shifted it around. So now our B section sounds like this. Changing up the drums a lot, so if I just play all of the drums at the same time, which we'll get to next time, the reason why I never have absolutely everything playing at the same time. I always hold something in reserve, but just so that you can hear what each of the different instruments is doing, we'll listen to all of the drums in this alternative loop. So you can hear, so I've muted a few things. This main kick drum sound is now doing more of a 4 on the floor kind of feel. If you contrast that with section A. And around that, I've tweaked a few things, kept some things the same. So kicks, these other kicks here are the same. You can already hear how swapping back and forth between these two patterns, even outside of the distinct sections, is going to be a lot of fun and give us a lot of groove in the track. We've got our longer bass riff again, as I said. And the elephant in the room, massive change to this pad sound. So I made a couple tweaks to this preset as I'd saved it previously. Trying to make it a bit softer, less of a transient kind of da 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 every time it rotates through the loop. I took this filter delay off because I figured the issue that I found was that this kind of looping sample was confusing the transient information, the really strong rhythmic elements that I was trying to get across in my track. It's obviously a very rhythmically complex track in a lot of ways. So I basically made some tweaks to the sound, the sampling, the effects that I'm putting on after it, just to make it so that we're minimizing that kind of rhythmic confusion. And then I thought I'd like to have like a nice rich supporting synth mirroring these chords that can kind of provide a bit of a bed to this chimey, dusty, textural sampler loop that was what we had last time. So I was just flicking through the core library and going through all of these different sounds. Something that I like to do is to challenge myself to use types of sounds that I don't naturally gravitate towards. So in this instance, that was this. I mean, it's called Chord Anthem Pad. It's a big kind of like EDM sort of maximalist David Guetta, Calvin Harris nonsense sound. But as I say, I like to challenge myself to use different kinds of sounds and try to make them fit into my world. And I think where it's ended up is actually really cool. So another thing that I found was that actually in trying to pump a load of different notes into it, the polyphony on this particular synth is set up to only have 4 voices, and I'm trying to get a lot more than 4 voices out of it. So it ends up having these really cool inversions where it's kind of going up and down the keyboard in terms of the pitch and which of the notes of the chord it's picking out for each. And I think that's just really cool. Added some attack time, as you can hear. That attack time is really key. Having that kind of slow fading in of each chord is, I think, really cool. And I think that makes it a really cool contrasting flavour. So while what the bass is doing, what the chord stabs are doing, are quite similar to my A section, in this B section, that really characterful, really colourful pad sound is doing a lot to differentiate it, as are the completely different drum patterns that I'm using the same sounds for, but changing up the rhythmic feel in a pretty major way to differentiate this A section and the B section as much as I can. So let's have another little listen. Now to the B section. think automating some of those parameters, particularly the bass, the pad sound, I'm going to get a lot of dynamism and excitement out of these sounds. I'm really excited with where this track is going. I think it's just got a cool character to it that I'm really enjoying playing around with, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. The sun went down while I was recording, and now it's very dark, but if I put the big light on, I'm gonna look really yellow and washed out and weird. Okay, yeah, that's where we're at so far. I think I've got enough material there. I know my process well enough that I've got enough material there to start blocking out the arrangement in the next episode. The tracks that you're working on, depending on your style of music, depending on what your tastes are as an artist, you might have a lot more material to work from than I do. I try to keep variation down to a minimum because I'm making dance floor tracks fundamentally. They're meant to be played in a DJ set, danced to, and the dynamics and the contrast and the feeling of newness and all of that kind of stuff in my genre is dictated by not my track, but the tracks that sit alongside my track in the DJ set. Because I DJ as well, I know what I want out of this kind of song. And by keeping the variation to a minimum while still, changing it up enough to keep it interesting, I know that I'm making the type of song that I would want to play out, and hopefully if I would want to play it out, other people will too. In your stylistic niche, that might look completely different. You might be a singer-songwriter who needs an intro and a chorus and a verse and a bridge and maybe a different arrangement for the second chorus, or it could be any number of things that your track is moving through, different movements, different feelings that you're trying to convey. So don't worry if you need significantly more of these different sections to get to this stage of the song idea where you feel like, okay, I've got what I need and I'm ready to start arranging. If you are enjoying this series, if you're getting something out of it, please like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I promise there will be more stuff that you are going to enjoy. If you are enjoying this, please feel free to tell me how great I look with my head shaved. I just did that as of recording last night. My wonderful partner helped me. There is no way that the back of my head would all be a consistent length if it wasn't for her, so shout outs. The dog is still here and she's very sleepy, so you kind of can't tell, but she's here. That's her ear. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Keep an eye out for next time round where we're going to actually start blocking out the arrangement. I think I'm going to record some of me actually in the moment rather than just completely trying to recap the entire process, because there's some interesting things I think to talk about at that stage. So look forward to that. Keep an eye out and I will see you in the next one.